So thank you. This is a hybrid meeting. So we do have a couple folks joining us on Zoom. So this will be recorded. You all won't be visible. It will just be the presentation. Want to make sure everybody on Zoom can hear me and can see the presentation. All good. Great. All right. So for those who are joining us in person, there is lunch in the back. It is labeled by your dietary needs. Madhav is also in the back, our staff member that can help if you have any questions. So today we are going to share a little bit about who we are, our impact for 2024, specifically in our strategic pillar area. So if you have been following us, you know we released our new strategic plan last year and have 5 strategic pillars, which our work falls under. So we'll be sharing some key updates about 2024. As well as some of our additional work areas. And then we'll be talking about what's coming up next for us. And then we will have question answer at the end. So if you could save your questions, also anybody on Zoom, if you have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and we will answer them at the end of the program. And also our staff will be present after. So if you want to stick around and chat with us, that's fine as well. Thank you. I think it's, what's going on? Okay. Okay. So to start with, I wanted to introduce our team. Again, my name is Sarah. I'm the lead resource development catalyst and my pronouns are she, her. Fabra is unable to join us today, but many of you may know her. She is the lead resource equity capacity catalyst. And I will pass it to the rest of our team if we want to just popcorn over and then we'll get started. Madhav? Is it echoing? Oh, okay.
Nicole Murphy, the director of community partnerships.
Hello, hello. Hello, hello. My name is Jalian Yang, she, they. I'm the director of storytelling and communications at Ford through Ferguson.
I serve as the communications catalyst at Ford through Ferguson.
Thank you.
I'm really good at running.
My name is Stephen Young, he, him pronouns, and I'm the development catalyst here at Ford through Ferguson.
Good afternoon again. My name is Anissa McCaskill. My pronouns are she, her, and I am executive director at Forward through Ferguson.
Hello, everyone. My name is Spencer Dunlap, Senior Director of Operations at Ford through Ferguson, and my pronouns are he, him.
Hi, I'm Gina Becknell. I use any pronouns, and I'm the Executive Administrative Catalyst here at Ford through Ferguson.
All right, thank you. I will pass it to Anissa to introduce our organization, and then we will get into our work updates.
Thank you. So we, in Four Corners, we kind of talked a little bit about who we are and what we do, but our mission is to center impacted communities and to mobilize accountable bodies to advance racially equitable systems and policies that ensure all people in the St. Louis region can thrive. What does that actually mean? You know, everyone has to have a nice mission statement. So basically, we recognize that we have Black, Brown, and other communities that are impacted by the systems of structure that we have in place in the St. Louis region, which also reflected nationally. And so what we attempt to do is center those individuals in our work by speaking truth to power, creating systems that are actually equitable, addressing policies that have caused us to live in a state of inequity amongst individuals. And to also ensure that by addressing the systemic inequities that we see, the St. Louis region can actually thrive. Can we go to the next? Our vision is to, we envision a transformed St. Louis region where regardless of race and zip code, there's justice for all, an opportunity to thrive, and a boundless possibility for all of our youth. So if you look back at our mission statement and then look at what our vision is that the things that typically separate and cause people to be impacted by systemic racism, power structure, inequity in housing and lending, all of the laundry list of things that we know have a thread line of racism going through, particularly in the St. Louis region, won't impact people's ability to thrive. and that our children can be everything that we've envisioned that they wanted to be. So when we did the Four Corners, I said, I don't envision that in my lifetime because I've seen regression. But our vision is that the St. Louis region will be transformed into something that we actually can see those changes occur, and that everyone has the possibility to thrive, and that our youth can actually not be limited by where their parents live, what their parents do, or by their race.
Oh, okay, yeah, so next we're going to get into our work updates. One of our strategic pillars is to build racial equity capacity. So some of you might have participated in any of these education opportunities. We do training and consulting partnerships. This list is just a few of the things that we've been working on this year. Very excited to be working with the City Department of Health, their entire department. And it's a pretty in-depth engagement with the City Department of Health that we're very excited about. We continue to work with the Integrated Health Network, including doing work when they're onboarding people on their team, but also some of their network of providers. We are also doing engagement with those folks. The Community Health Commission of Missouri, very excited to do similar work with them that we do with Integrated Health Network. With the Herman Center for Child and Family Development, we went in together on a grant to help them think about action strategies for how they can be more racially equitable. And then the St. Louis Queer Support and Healing is another granted situation where we are helping them think through a new program, basically from the ground up. They hired new people for the program. We've been in conversation about their onboarding, but also in the creation of their program and the facilitation of that program. So really excited to see as they pull together that cohort and actually start being able to consult throughout that process. We run something called the Racial Equity Roundtable, which is envisioned to be both cross-sector and sector-specific. So we've done an education roundtable where folks in various positions and roles in education, be that organizations or schools, came together to talk about, again, their racial equity capacity. And so a lot of this is internal work. How are your policies? How are your internal systems? Are they doing harm to folks who work in your organization? Are they doing harm to folks that you seek to impact? And then what changes can be made at that policy level, at that operations, organizational, cultural level, so that you're not replicating patterns of harm, both internal and external. And then we have the Racial Equity Capacity Assessment. We worked with the Missouri Historical Society this year to do one, which involves, as people on the staff doing this assessment, we go through the data, we write a report, we do some consulting to help, again, folks think about those internal processes and how they can be changed to move their work forward. Going to pass it to Madhav to talk about policy and data.
Yeah. Hello, hello. All right. So this has been a pretty big year for policy and data. One of the things that we started off the year with was the reconvening and reactivation of the First Responder Alternative Coalition. This was a natural progression of the Transforming 911 report that FTF put out. And so we are working with a bunch of different nonprofits in the region providing services to communities that are typically unheard in the conversation for what a proper public health safety system that truly addresses the needs of the people in our region looks like. So working with those nonprofits that work with immigrant communities, unhoused communities, the disabled communities in our region, and then also with some folks in local government to envision what a pilot first responder alternative program could look like in St. Louis County. We also have put out a 10-year retrospective. It has been 10 years since the killing of Mike Brown and the Ferguson uprising. And so we put together a narrative on the last 10 years and did an analysis of data that has been published by us and others, as well as new data that has come out to kind of see where we've moved, where we haven't. And if you're interested in seeing more of that, that came out literally this week. So very excited about that. And please take a look at it. We also did an extension of our Transforming 911 work in the city. The original Transforming 911 report was focused on St. Louis County. We were able to analyze data on 911 calls made to St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department over a 5-year time span, and then broke them down by service category and frequency across STL neighborhoods. We're still percolating the best way to share out that information, but we have it and we're excited to share it when it's done. So that is policy and data. Thanks so much.
Yes, so our next strategic pillar is coalition support and strategy. Something that we know and acknowledge at FTF is that systems change work is not going to be the work of one organization. It's going to be the work of our entire networks of our communities coming together to do that work. So this year, we worked with the Honest Elections Coalition, which was looking at ways in which we could introduce public financing for elections. We focused our survey and our engagement in North County. We have a link to the report, which was beautifully finished recently, and we did a webinar about it. And are very excited about the possibility of creating more equitable systems in relationship to campaigning and elections. We also have been working with the prosecutor organizing table since I believe around 2020. And this was a big year for us because we finally got a product out. In fact, two. So we put out our first report, which was introducing the table, what we were doing, why we were doing it, which is essentially wanting to create metrics for us to be able to hold these publicly elected officials accountable. And then we released a second report, which was on the county prosecutor's office, and are looking forward to producing and releasing a report on the city circuit attorney's office in the new year. We worked with Defund, Re-envision, Transform to advocate for some policy and to advocate for folks on the public safety committee to do things a little bit differently in relationship to our public safety system. Part of the work that DRT does every budget cycle is to help folks understand where the money is being proposed to go in the city. And it is always an interesting exercise to see where that money ends up. And it's usually not in the hands of folks who are doing health and human services. It's in the hands of the police. And so this coalition has been a really important space for us to envision alternatives and what we could do if we could get our hands on those resources. And then no more jail deaths. Not sure if folks are aware, but there has been an alarming number of deaths in our jail system, more than larger jail systems across the country, in fact. And so we've been working with a group of organizations to bring light to that issue and also make some demands of our public leadership in terms of transparency and accountability for what has been happening in our jails.
Hello, everyone. This was a very exciting year for storytelling and communications, in large part because it is the 10-year anniversary of the Ferguson uprising. We wanted to take that opportunity to highlight people who have been impactful for movements for equity prior to the uprising, during the uprising, and thereafter. And so, what you see on this wall here is a lot of those stories. We worked with Humans of St. Louis to share photo stories about some of the lessons that people have learned and what people want us to know about what work there is in the future. We also work with My Friends and I, a local video production company, to also share those perspectives. Like Nicole mentioned, we released 2 different reports with the prosecutor organizing table, and part of that is about storytelling and communications because it is sharing narrative frameworks about how people can understand the role of prosecution and how that impacts people entering the carceral system, and also the fact that people have power. We have power to hold people accountable for their roles in these things, and also to ask for investments in things like health and human services, housing, education. And what we also did this year was refresh our website. So at fordthroughferguson.org, you can see that our website now reflects all the ways that we engage in this work, whether it's coalition support and strategy, storytelling and communications, policy and data, justice, philanthropy, things like that, and all the things that we're sharing today. And our website was not updated since 2016. And so that's really exciting that we also have a place for all of the original data and research and the tools that people use on a regular basis to do their work in advocacy. We also received a lot of press hits, more press hits than any other year that I've worked at the organization, which is 3 years, coming up on 3 years. And so a lot of those hits were around prosecutor organizing table. People were really interested, especially around election season, about what we had to say about local area prosecutors and also the various metrics that we want to hold them accountable to. People were also interested in our perspective on what has and hasn't changed since the Ferguson uprising. And so we were able to share our thoughts on that. And this screenshot is an example of an article. We also provide thought leadership. So we were published in a journal about a national journal about philanthropy, about what funding gaps still exist 10 years after the Ferguson uprising. What we know is organizations like ours get influxes in crisis funding because philanthropy really understands crisis, but they don't necessarily always understand sustaining things over the long term. And so, as you can see, we had local press hits as well as national attention. Are very proud of our social media growth, in large part due to Yane Robinson, who's taking pictures here, our communications catalyst. She did so much work on content creation and also strategy together. We were able to grow our audiences, especially in 3 different platforms. We have more YouTube followers, LinkedIn followers, well as MailChimp subscribers. And so MailChimp is where we have our monthly newsletter. If you aren't already subscribed, head to forwardthroughferguson.org to make sure you get those updates. I promise we will not overload you and it's all relevant.
All right, thank you. And our last strategic pillar is justice philanthropy. So in this Ferguson Commission report, there was a call to have a 25-year endowed fund for racial equity. So we just wrapped up our pilot. It was a 3-year pilot where we were the project managers and community members made decisions on where funding went. It was $1.3 million distributed across nearly 70 organizations. So we had a celebration for that in September and actually have a report of the pilot coming out soon as well. And you've heard several times this was the 10-year angelversary. And so we partnered with Chosen for Change, which is Mike Brown Jr.'s father's organization, and helped them commemorate through several events how they wanted to commemorate the 10-year angelversary. And Nicole will also speak to our volunteer work with that as well. And we also served on a couple of national and local host committees. So we had 2 major conferences in St. Louis this year. One was the Association of Black Foundation Executives, which was hosted in April. So we served on the local host committee and also at a panel at that conference. And then just recently, Facing Race hosted their biennial conference in St. Louis. So we were also on the local host committee and had a plenary session at that conference as well. And lastly, we are planning for the 2025 Racial Equity Summit. We'll have a save the date later today, but if you haven't been to that, we would love for you to join us next time. All right, and now we will get into some of the additional work areas outside of our strategic pillars. Yeah, Nicole.
Yeah, so much talking today. Um, yes, so community partnerships had a big year. We increased our engagement so much. Part of that is because we have more staff capacity to be able to show up to places. We received lots of speaking engagement and event invitations. A lot of those are from growing and maintaining partnerships. So we speak to a lot of students and classes about the work that we're doing. We speak at these national conferences. We table in community. One of a specific highlight for me, and I think for a lot of the folks on the team, was we were able to participate in our first Tower Grove Pride, where we definitely engaged with upwards of like 200 people about the work that we were doing. And it's just a really fun event and fun community space. And as Sarah mentioned, we worked really closely with Mike Brown Sr. and Miss Cal from Chosen for Change to do volunteer coordination for all of their commemoration events this year. And we're looking forward to doing even more work in the new year as we're launching and starting our engagement efforts for our next iteration of our community activation plan. The previous one was our hashtag 2039 plan. If folks are familiar with that, or if you're not familiar with that, still a pretty relevant document, but we're going to update it. And very excited to get out in community. I mean, almost from the jump next year, uh, to do way more engagement and learn more about what are the priority areas that folks in community would really like for Forward Through Ferguson to address. Yeah. As I mentioned, we did a lot of speaking. We're doing a lot of speaking today. And so, as John mentioned, we had a lot of engagement around our storytelling. That is something that we have become known for. And so when folks are interested in sort of the data and research side, we make sure that we pair that with storytelling to make sure that it's humanized and that folks can really connect with it. So our wonderful storytelling team has been on the road quite a bit this year to talk about the storytelling work that we're doing. This is just a little example of the different places we showed up to talk about storytelling. We also showed up with some of our regular partners to talk to St. Mary's College, who was in town, about the coalition work that we're doing. We also had lots of conversation and continue to have conversation. If you want to have conversation about transforming 911, we are still very excited about it. And we are still pairing it with our first responder alternative work to get more folks interested and engaged in that coalition work as well. And then justice philanthropy, which is one of our newer strategic pillars, but because we did the pilot program that Sarah mentioned, are just like incredibly excited to talk about what we learned and the ways in which we think that work can grow in our region. And so we spoke at a variety of events and conferences, and yeah, certainly one of the highlights for me always is going to be talking about the Racial Healing and Justice Fund and the work that has been able to happen as a result of that. And then it was the 10-year anniversary in August since the killing of Mike Brown Jr. And we got tapped quite a bit to talk about where we are and where we were. That was both nationally and locally. That was both in the press and just in regular sort of conversations with other folks.
All right, it's me time. So we had some developments in development this year. We released our first annual impact report, which gives our community a little bit better of an idea of what's going on the day to day throughout the previous year. We also submitted our first federal grant request, which is providing a really good framework for all federal grant requests going forward. We got a lot of good feedback, and we're really excited to keep moving forward with more federal grant requests in the future. We also expanded our donor base to 86 new donors and thank you. Also increased engagement and giving on Give STL Day through our board members serving as ambassadors. So not just our reach, but just the amount of people who are engaging with our social media posts and of course, donating as this is a development slide. So we're really excited about that as well. And then we also planned and hosted our major fundraiser, Unflinching Progress, which raised nearly $90,000 and engaged 150 individuals.
All right. Furthermore, here are our audited 990 financials. These are exclusive of in-kind services, which we did receive a great amount last year due to our strategic plan. And if you're wondering where our revenue comes from, it's nearly 70% from corporate and foundation grants and other contributions, about 15% from individuals and 15% from our earned revenue, some of the racial equity capacity building programs that we spoke about. And nearly 70% of those funds support our programs.
So with board and governance, first and foremost, I want to give a shout out to one of our board members, Adiola Adewale is right here. We also have an incoming board member, Miss Ellen Scott is right there. She'll be joining us in January. But earlier this year, we had the pleasure of being able to add 9 new board members, but we recently also approved further growth of the board by approving us to go up to 20 board members as opposed to 17. So in addition to the 3 members who are going to be transitioning on, we have 3 who are transitioning off. We'll also have the ability to add another 4 members to our board next year. We approved our cross org relationship with 5 board and staff joint sessions and multiple socials. We actually have one this week. So the joint org relationship is actually us coming in. It's almost like a work session where I know that I brought the strategic growth plan for the organization, and it was not just a discussion with the board. It was a collaborative discussion with board and staff, a mixture sitting together, talking through what that looks like, what the issues are, and what needs to happen with that strategic growth model. And so it was a lot. It's 34 pages. I don't recommend somebody writing one, but we wrote one. I got it done. And so it actually shows us from moving from the startup phase. I think if you were with us last year, you understand that we grew and doubled our staff by 100%. We went from 5 staff members to 10. And so this growth model shows what we will be 10 years from now. And I think the overall staff number that we came up to would be 25 staff members. But what does it take to get us to that point? What do we have to do in terms of giving, programming, and also just relationship and community in order for us to grow? Because it's not just a matter of adding staff, it's actually making sure that we're doing the work and creating the programming around the work that we've identified. So what's next? A lot. I just want to give a shout out. So as Sarah said, we actually had our first, I call it our first grown-up fundraiser. And so that's what this image is from. But going forward, we will be continuing with the 10-year data retrospective. It's like this close to being done, and there's some additional work that has to happen. Most people don't realize that the Ferguson Commission was actually named in November of 2014. And then their report was issued in 2015. So in November 2015, the Ferguson Commission issued the document that we call the Ferguson Commission Report, which is actually called Forward Through Ferguson, A Path Forward. So when people ask you why we utilize that name, we are taking the name directly from the Ferguson Commission as a reminder that the path forward is through. And so what does 10 years look like for the Ferguson Commission report? And then also, what does it look like for us? Because the Ferguson Commission called for the creation of a nonprofit to sit at the intersection of power in the community. And we are that organization. And they sunset themselves in 2015, November 2015, and we were born in December of 2015. So 10 years looking back on what the Ferguson Commission's progress and what those 189 calls to action really call for, but then also as an organization, what does 10 years look like for us? The Racial Equity Summit, again, the Racial Equity Summit, the Racial Equity Summit, the Racial Equity Summit will be in August this year, as opposed to September. And I think we've also had it in November the last time. First Responder Alternative Coalition will continue to do its work. I specifically mentioned our name and the understanding of who and what we are and why we hold on to this name, because we recognize that everyone doesn't understand that we are not a component of the city of Ferguson. We're a component and the legacy of the Ferguson Commission. And by utilizing that name, we're calling attention back to that document, back to the community voice. But we also recognize that that means that there has to be some messaging and some branding and some style refresh to make sure that people come back to that. So one of the terms that came out of that was unflinching. And so we did kind of do a little, this is my potty mouth showing up, y'all. But we want to make sure that we recognize where we came from and that people understand that just because that was what was created 10 years ago, that it is still relevant. And so the discussion was, do we change the name? If you change the name, you change the history. And it becomes very easy for people to forget how you came into being. So we are Forward Through Ferguson, but you will see some things really drilling down why we are named what we are named, why we refuse to give up that name and branding, but then also how we can ensure that it's not just naming and branding, but the work that the community is aware of. The community activation plan, I can tell you that Nicole and Madhav and pretty much everybody on staff, but particularly Nicole and Madhav, have been working very hard with our community leadership committee of our board to create this community activation plan. And you'll hear more about that coming up in 2025. And then finally, we have a number of things that are coming up with the building racial equity capacity. We will have a health equity roundtable. It was mentioned that we're actually doing work and we're doing training with the City of St. Louis Department of Health. Part of that training will involve a health equity roundtable, not just with them, but with some of their peers who are doing the work of health and health education and health activism within the St. Louis region. We actually are very excited to be a part of the James S. McDonald Foundation grantee cohort. So basically a community of practice. If you are an organization that has received funding from the James S. McDonald Foundation, over the next 2 years, you will receive training in a group at a roundtable, but also as organizations in the idea of centering equity in your work in the STEM and neuroscience sector. The Regional Arts Commission capacity assessment is actually underway. The Community Health Commission of Missouri has asked us to come in and do a similar training to what we've done in what we've done with the health department. But of course, we always customize based upon what is needed. And they will also be sitting on that health equity roundtable. And then also the integrated health network workshops. We will be doing workshops with them, but they also will be sitting with us on that health equity roundtable. So forward into action, is that me or is that you? Go ahead.
All right, so this was a lot of information. It will be recorded and we will share the slides out because there were several hyperlinks here as well. But if you would like to connect with us forward, schedule a one-on-one. If you'd like to meet with any of the staff or if you'd like to meet with a group of staff, we're definitely happy to connect with you individually or with your organization. You can volunteer. If you fill out this volunteer form, we can share opportunities throughout the year and you'll be hearing from Nicole on that. Also, we talked about several building racial equity capacity trainings and programs that we offer. They're really customizable. We have organizations come who want to do a half day training, a full day training, or a 3-month training, or a full year engagement with their staff. So we really can do it all. So we would love for you to make a commitment to work with us and your organizations. You're also welcome to join one of our coalitions as an individual or as an organization. Um, and our contact email is there as well if you have any questions. It would be remiss if we did not ask for you to invest in our work. You can donate online, mail a check, submit a grant through your donor advised fund, scan the QR code. We also have merchandise for sale. Stephen, we have some pins, stickers, and t-shirts. If you see our staff is wearing the t-shirts, unflinching with the definition, or a Forward Through Ferguson shirt as well. We mentioned Racial Equity Summit, so pull out your phone, save the date in the calendar for August 8th and 9th. More details to come. And there is a website for Racial Equity Summit, and then you can also see information on our social media for that. We talked about merchandise. All right, so now we have some time for questions. I will say if we have a microphone or somebody, one of the staff members can go, and then also if anybody has questions on Zoom. Okay. Any questions? And this will be up for all staff to answer.
Good morning. My question is specifically in the category of the building racial equity partnerships, programming, and training sessions that we provide. How are we adjusting positioning or communications given the recent but increasingly more mainstream kind of backlash to phrases like DEI, DBEI, and all of that category?
I think part of it was the discussion that we had earlier today, where we make very, very clear that we are not a DAI organization. We are a systems change organization, which for some people is acceptable, and for some others, it's still scary. I think my potty mouth shows up. We are unflinching. But we also recognize that there's a level of discomfort. And so part of it is a discussion of what is your discomfort with the term equity. And as much as people may push back, we push back as well. I have said that part of this work is recognizing that everyone may not come with you, but just as you lose people coming along with you, there are other people who jump on board when they see that you stand strong on what you're talking about. We have had quite a number of funders who have said that their priorities have shifted, but we also have had some individuals who have stepped forward and attempted to fill some gaps as well. How that will happen next year when there's a change of administration, I'm not certain. You know, we're a 501c3, so we're not in a political space where we're talking about one candidate versus another, but we do know that the atmosphere has changed and we anticipate that. But we also know that there are quite a few people who, and organizations who are alarmed and concerned and are seeking to find a space to put in some good work. And so we are dedicating ourselves to finding and aligning ourselves with them. But the best answer I can give you is the term unflinching. Because if we run and hide, then what happens?
Saw you first.
And I'm still learning about like your various initiatives and your pillars, but when it comes to like the first responder alternative, like, and I ask this because I have family members that are St. Louis police officers. So how do you all like kind of work with those stakeholders? I know part of it is like finding alternatives, but what about like the existing structures and those folks?
I'm actually going to turn that over to Madhav because he's the lead on the first responder alternative. Do you need to repeat the question? Does she need to repeat it for you? So Madhav, actually, can you come up? The mic's connected. Okay, you're good.
So for first responder alternative, the approach we're taking is kind of holistic, full system. It's really just trying to reimagine what our public safety system is like. And to your point, we do have to engage like a wide variety of folks, whether that's people in government, whether that's people in the police department, whether that's EMS, fire and rescue. Really, the goal of a first responder alternative in my mind is to reimagine the public safety system so that when people are in a time of crisis and they call 911, they're getting the services they need in a timely and expedient manner. We know just from our Transforming 911 report that 911 is a widely utilized service, but we also know that from 1.7 million calls made over 5 years to St. Louis County Police Department, the vast majority of those were not for crimes or violent crimes. They're like calls for service, things like wellness requests, medical wellness checks, medical transportation, things of that nature. So the goal is really to figure out how we can get folks the services they need in a timely manner. And also because we know there is a history of negative interaction between folks and armed police showing up in times of crisis. What does it look like if armed police is not the immediate first response when somebody calls 911? So we're still building out what that's going to look like. St. Louis County is a bear. There's over 90 municipalities in St. Louis County, each with their own eight. If you count the ones that are like incorporated or whatever, it's over 90. So um, yeah. So long answer to a short question. I like to ramble, sorry. But I think it's going to take engaging all those different stakeholders and also, to be quite honest, understanding the power that they hold and the ways in which they operate with and sometimes against each other.
Can
I'll repeat it. No, you're fine.
Oh,
We're running the Zoom. and
Oh,
can't hear them.
okay. I was just curious as a follow-up question, like, are you all providing any training to those first responders? And then also, I get like the reimagined notion, but is there a spectrum where it's like, we want it to be here is the ideal state, but is there like a progression, like, hey, these are key milestones we'd like to see?
So for both of those things, the answer is we want to get to that point, but and I won't speak for the coalition because I facilitate it. But I will say that we are envisioning those processes and coming up with those milestones actively. We're still in like a pilot design process. So the goal is to get to that point where we have tangible milestones and we have some of that preliminary work done. But I think that as far as the racial equity capacity building programs at the moment, we don't have anything specific to first responders right now, but that's not to say that we couldn't have that in the future, just not right now.
Yeah, I think one of the things that the First Responder Alternative Coalition is seeking to do is to remove the pressure from individuals that are not readily positioned to be doing particular kinds of work. That being said, we are still very much in a design phase of what the pilot will look like. We're still very much engaging with folks in community to understand like what are their top priorities for this pilot to be doing, because we recognize it's a pilot and we probably won't be able to set up a program or a system that answers all of those needs for when folks are in crisis, but what are the ones that we really need to focus on? Um, and because I think that we want to, keep folks in the spaces where they feel most confident, I don't imagine a future in which our build racial equity capacity building programs are doing training for first responders, right? Like that feels like other first responders need to be doing training for first responders. Are there avenues in which that kind of training could be utilized? Absolutely. Um, we do that work internal to ourselves as well. So I see it connecting in some ways to our racial equity capacity work, but it is pretty firmly in a policy and data sort of realm of our work in community partnerships, community engagement, and storytelling. Does that answer your question? Yes.
Hello. What are the plans to be sure that Latin voices are represented at the St.
I'm
Louis
sorry, I
Equity
hear a
Summit?
on the other side.
So, what are the plans to be sure that Latin voices are being represented at the St. Louis Equity Summit? And I would love to be part of that solution, whether
First of all, you know I love you. Secondly, it's a matter of us making sure that we prioritize it. So we're actually in the process of planning it out. So with the last summit, I came on board after the summit was set, but I actually was a volunteer in community that kind of picked some of the tracks. And that actually is always a discussion, is how to make sure that there is full representation from every sector that of race, basically. So last year, not yeah, wow, last year, a lot of the discussion was trying to make sure that there were Latinx representation as well as representation from indigenous communities. And that I don't see that changing for us. It's more along the matter of getting the word out, because when we ask or when we set up, we also have typically an open call or request for people to present or to participate. And I can say, as someone who was on one of those subcommittees that was looking at what was submitted, there wasn't a lot of submittal. So recognizing that and having that bug in our ear is helpful to make sure that we can reach out to you and to other resources to make sure that the word gets out and that there is a pool of representation.
Yes. So in short, we have a community committee that helps make the decisions on some of the sessions for the summit. We are currently planning right now, and we'll be asking folks to come to that committee shortly. And we also, aside from just what is submitted, work to cultivate relationships with folks so that we have someone we can go, you know what, I think
Hey.
you'd be really good at doing a session on X, Y, and Z. Would you want to come do a session on X, Y, and Z? So it's a little bit of an open call, but it's also a cultivation and like tapping folks that we love and we recognize the wonderful work that they're doing.